Hello, how are you? Right, I thought I'd give you the choice. So, I've already read a couple of chapters of The Famous Five, so you can watch those. And now, I thought I would start The Wishing Chair again. And then you could see which you would prefer me to carry on with. Okay. Chapter 1, Home for the Holidays. Molly and Peter had just arrived home for the holidays. Their schools had broken up the same day, which was very lucky, and Mum had met them at the station. They hugged her hard. "Oh, Mum, it's grand to see you again. How is everyone?" "Fine," said Mum. "The garden's looking lovely, your bedrooms are all ready for you, and your playroom at the bottom of the garden is longing for you to go there and play as usual." The two children looked at one another. They had a big secret, one that they could possibly mention even in their letters to one another at school. How they were longing to talk about it now. "Can we just pop down to the playroom first of all?" asked Peter when they got home. "Oh no, dear," said Mum. "You must come upstairs and wash and help me to unpack your things. You will have plenty of time to spend in your playroom these holidays." The children's secret was in their playroom, and they so badly wanted to see it again. They went upstairs and washed, and then went down to tea. "Can we go to our playroom after we've helped you to unpack?" asked Peter. Mum laughed. "Very well. Leave me to unpack and go along. I expect you want to see if I've given away any of your things. Well, I haven't. I never do that without asking you." After tea, Peter spoke to Molly in a low voice. "Molly, do you think Binky will be down in our playroom waiting for us with the wishing chair?" "Oh, I do hope so," said Molly. "Oh, Peter, it was dreadful trying to keep our secret all the term long and never saying anything to anyone." "Well, it's such a marvellous secret, it's worth keeping well," said Peter. "Do you remember when we first got the wishing chair, Molly?" "Yes," said Molly. "We went to a funny little shop that sold old things to get something for Mum's birthday. And we saw heaps of strange, enchanted things there, and we were frightened and huddled together in an old chair." "And we wished we were safe back at home," said Peter. "And, hey presto, the chair grew little red wings on its legs and flew out of a window with us and took us back to our playroom." "Yes, and it wouldn't go back to the shop even when we commanded it to," said Molly. "So we had to keep it. Our very own wishing chair." "Oh, do you remember how we went off in it again and came to a castle where there was a giant who kept a little servant called Binky?" said Peter. "And we rescued him and took him home in the wishing chair with us." "Oh, that was lovely," said Molly. "And after that Binky lived down in our playroom and looked after the chair for us and told us when it grew its wings so that we could fly off in it again and have wonderful adventures," said Peter. "Then we had to go to school and leave it." Now, all of that is in case somebody started reading The Wishing Chair again without having read The Wishing Chair. So it lets them know what the story is. Okay, but you might have worked that out. But it didn't matter really, because Binky took the chair home to his mother's cottage and lived with her and took care of it for us, said Molly. "Didn't know that. And he said he'd come back as soon as we came home for the holidays and bring the chair with him so that we could go adventuring again," finished Peter. "If Mum only knew that's the reason we want to get down to the playroom, to see if Binky is there and to see the dear old wishing chair again." Peter found the key. "Come on, Molly, let's go and see all our toys again." "And the wishing chair," said Molly in a whisper. "And Binky." They rushed downstairs and out into the garden. It was the end of July and the garden was full of flowers. Oh, it was lovely to be home. No more lessons for 8 weeks, no more preps. They raced down to the playroom, which was really a big airy shed at the bottom of the garden. Peter slid the key into the lock. "Binky," he called, "are you here?" He unlocked the door. The children went into the playroom and looked around. It was a nice room with a big rug on the floor, shelves for their books and toys, a cot with Molly's old dolls in it, and a large doll's house in the corner. But there was no wishing chair, and no Binky, the pixie. The children stared round in dismay. "He's not here," said Peter. "He said he would come today with the chair. I gave him the date and he wrote it down in his notebook." "I hope he's not ill," said Molly. They looked all around the playroom, set the musical box going and opened the windows. They felt very disappointed. They had so looked forward to seeing Binky and to sitting once more in the wishing chair. Suddenly, a little face looked in at the door. Molly gave a shout. "Binky, it's you! We were so worried about you. We hoped you'd be here." Both children gave the little pixie a hug. Binky grinned. "Well, how could I be here waiting for you if the door was locked and the windows fastened, silly? I may be a pixie, but I can't fly through locked doors. Oh, I have missed you. Were you very bored away at school?" "Oh, no," said Peter. "Boarding school is simply lovely. We both loved it. But we're jolly glad to be home again." "Binky, where's the wishing chair?" asked Molly anxiously. "Nothing's happened to it, has it? Have you got it with you?" "Well, I brought it here this morning," said Binky. "But when I found the door of the playroom was locked and couldn't get in, I hid it under the hedge at the bottom of the garden. But you'd be surprised how many people nearly found it." "But nobody goes to the bottom of the garden," said Peter. "Oh, don't they?" said Binky. "Well, first of all, your gardener thought he cut the hedge there today and had an awful job dragging the chair from one hiding place to another. Then an old gypsy woman came by and she almost saw it, but I barked like a dog and she ran away." The children laughed. "Poor old Binky, you must have been glad when we got here at last." "Let's go and get it," said Peter. "I'm hoping to sit in it again. Has it grown its wings much since we left it with you, Binky?" "Not once," said Binky. "Funny, isn't it? It's just stood in my mother's kitchen like any other ordinary chair and never grown even one red wing. It was waiting for you to come back." "I hope it was, because then it may grow its wings heaps of times," said Peter, "and we'll go off with lots of adventures." They went to the hedge. "There it is," said Molly in excitement. "I can see one of its legs sticking out." They dragged out the old chair. "Just the same," said Peter in delight. "And how well you've kept it, Binky. It's polished so brightly." "That was my mother did that," said Binky. "She said such a wonderful chair should have a wonderful polish, and she was at it every day. Rub, 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 till the chair groaned." Peter carried the chair back to the playroom. Binky went in front to make sure there was nobody looking. They didn't want any questions asked about why chairs should be hidden in hedges. They set it down in its old place in the playroom. Then they all climbed into it. "It's just the same," said Peter. "We feel a bit more squashed than usual because Molly and I seem to have grown at school. But you haven't grown, Binky." "No, I shan't grow any more," said Binky. "Don't you wish the chair could grow its wings and go flapping off somewhere with us now?" "Oh, yes," said Molly. "Chair, do grow your wings, just to please us, even if it's only to take us a little way up into the air and back." But the chair didn't. The chair looked anxiously down at its legs to see if the red buds were forming that sprouted into wings, but there was nothing there. "It's no good," said Binky. "It won't grow its wings just because it's asked. It can be very obstinate, you know. All I hope is that it hasn't forgotten how to grow wings after being still so long. I shouldn't like the magic to fade away." This was a dreadful thought. The children patted the arms of the chair. "Dear wishing chair, you haven't forgotten how to grow wings, have you?" The chair gave a remarkable creak, a very long one. Everyone laughed. "It's all right," said Binky. "That's its way of telling us it hasn't forgotten. A creak is the only voice it's got." Mum came down to the garden. "Children, Dad's home. He wants to see you." "Right," called back Peter. He turned to Binky. "See you tomorrow, Binky. You can cuddle up on the sofa as usual with the rug and the cushion for the night. You'll live in our playroom, won't you, as you did before, and tell us when the chair grows its wings?" "Yes, I shall like to live here once more," said Binky. The children ran back to the house, and they had a very nice evening indeed, telling their parents everything that had happened in the term. Then off they went to bed, glad to be in their own dear little rooms again. But They hadn't been asleep very long before Peter began to dream that he was a rat being shaken by a dog. It was a very unpleasant dream, and he woke up with a jump. It was Binky shaking him by the arm. "Wake up," whispered the pixie. "The chair's grown its wings already. They're big, strong ones, and they're flapping like anything. If you want an adventure, hurry up." Well, what a thrill. Peter woke Millie, and they pulled on their clothes very quickly and ran down the garden. They heard a loud flapping noise as they reached the playroom shed. "It's the chair's wings," panted Binky. "Come on, we'll just sit in it before it goes flying off." And it looks like we've got time for the second chapter. Chapter 2, Off on an Adventure. The children raced into the playroom door and made for the wishing chair. They could see it easily in the bright moonlight. It was just about to fly off when they flung themselves in it. Binky squeezed between them, sitting on the top of the back of the chair. "Good old washing chair," said Peter. "You didn't take long to grow your wings. Where are we going?" "Where would you like to go?" said Binky. "Wish and we'll go wherever you wish." "Well, let me see. Oh dear, I simply can't think of anywhere," said Molly. "Peter, you wish quickly." Wishing chair, take us to... "Oh, goodness knows where I want to go," cried Peter. "I simply don't..." But, dear me, the wishing chair was off. It flapped his wings very strongly indeed, rose up into the air, flew towards the door and out of it, then up into the air it went, flapping its red wings in the moonlight. Binky giggled. "Oh, Peter, you said take us to goodness knows where," said the pixie, "and that's just about where we're going." "Gracious, is there really a land called goodness knows where?" said Peter in surprise. "Yes. Don't you remember when we went to the land of scallywags once? The Prince of Goodness knows where came to see me," said Binky. "I was pretending to be a king. Well, I suppose it's his land we're going to." I don't remember that one, do you? Land of scallywags. No, don't remember it. "Where is it?" said Molly. "Goodness knows," said Binky. "I don't. I've never met anyone who did either." "Well, the wishing chair seems to know," said Peter as it flew higher and higher in the air. But it didn't know really. It dropped downwards after a time and came to a tiny village. Peter leaned out of the chair and gazed with great interest at it. "Look at that bridge," she said. "Hey, chair, whatever are you doing now?" The chair hadn't landed in the village. It had flown a few feet above the strange little houses and had then shot upwards again. The chair flew on again and then came to a heaving mass of water. Was it the sea or a lake? The children didn't know. "Look at that lovely silver moon path on the sea," said Molly, leaning out of the chair. "I'm sure it leads to the moon." The chair seemed to think so too. It flew down to the water, got on the moon path and followed it steadily, up and up and up. "Hey, this isn't the way to goodness knows where," said Binky in alarm. "It's the way to the moon. Oh, don't be silly, chair." The chair stopped and hovered in mid-air as if it had heard Binky and was changing its mind. To the children's great relief, it left the moon path and flew on till it came to a little island. This was perfectly round and flat and had one big tree standing up in the middle of it. Under the tree was a boat, and someone was fast asleep in it. "Oh, that's my cousin, Sleep Alone," said Binky in surprise. "He's a funny fellow, you know. Can't bear to sleep if anyone else is within miles of him. So he has a boat and an aeroplane, and each night he takes one or the other and goes off to some lonely place to sleep. Hey there, Sleep Alone." Binky's shout made the children jump. The chair jumped too, and Molly was almost jerked off. She clutched at the arm. The little man in the boat awoke. He was more like a brownie than a pixie, and he had a very long beard, which he wound neatly round his neck like a scarf. He was most surprised to see the wishing chair landing on the island just near him. He scowled at Binky. "What's all this? Coming and shouting at me in the middle of the night. Can't I ever sleep alone? You always do, said Binky. Don't be so cross. Aren't you surprised to see us? Not a bit, said Sleep Alone. You're always turning up when I don't want to have company. Go away. I've a cold coming on and I feel gloomy. Is that why you've got your beard wound round your neck, to keep it warm? Asked Molly. How long is it when it unwinds? I've no idea, said Sleep Alone, who seemed a most disagreeable fellow. Where are you going in the middle of the night? Are you quite mad? We're going to goodness knows where, said Binky, but the chair doesn't seem to know the way. Do you know it? Goodness knows where it is, said Sleep Alone, pulling his beard tight around his neck. Better ask her. The children and Binky stared. Ask who? Said Binky. Goodness, of course, said Sleep Alone, settling down in his boat again. Oh, is goodness the name of a person then? Said Molly, suddenly seeing light. You are a very stupid little girl, I think, said Sleep Alone. Am I to go on and on saying the same thing over and over again? Now, good night, and go and find goodness if you want to disturb someone else. Where does she live? Bellowed Binky in Sleep Alone's ears, afraid that he would go to sleep before he told them anything else. That was too much for Sleep Alone. He shot up and reached for an oar. Before Binky could get out of the way, he had given him such a slap with the oar blade that Binky yelled at the top of his voice. Then Sleep Alone turned on the two children, waving the oar in a most alarming manner. Peter pulled Molly to the chair. He put out a hand and dragged Binky to it, too, shouting, Go to goodness, chair! Go to goodness, wherever she is! Up rose the chair so very suddenly that Binky fell off and had to be dragged up and up again. Sleep Alone roared after them. Now I'm thoroughly awake and I shan't go to sleep tonight. You wait till I see you again, Binky. I'll fly you off in my aeroplane to the land of rubbish and I'll drop you in the biggest dustbin there. He's not a very nice cousin to have, is he? Said Molly, when they'd left Sleep Alone well behind. I hope we don't see him again. Who is this goodness, I wonder, said Peter. Never heard of her, said Binky, but the chair really seems to know where it's going this time, so I suppose it knows goodness all right. The wishing chair was flying steadily to the east now. It had left the water behind and was now over some land that lay shining in the moonlight. The children could see towers and pinnacles, but they were too high up to see anything clearly. The chair suddenly flew downwards. It came to a small cottage. All three of its chimneys were smoking. The smoke was green, and the children knew that was a sign that a witch lived there. I say, that's witch smoke, said Peter nervously. He had met witches before on his adventures, and he knew quite a bit about them. I hope the chair has come to the right place, said Molly, as it landed gently on the path just outside the door of the little cottage. They jumped off the chair, dragged it under a tree, and went to knock at the door. A little old woman opened it. She looked so ordinary that the children felt sure she wasn't a witch. Please, is this where goodness lives? Asked Binky politely. Not exactly, but I keep a book of goodness, said the old woman. Have you come to seek advice from it? Well, we rather wanted to know where the land of goodness knows where is, said Binky, and we were told that only goodness knew where it was. Ah, well, you will have to consult my goodness book then, said the old woman. Wait till I get on my things. She left them in a tiny kitchen and disappeared. When she came back, what a difference in her. She had on a tall pointed hat, the kind witches and wizards wear, and a great cloak that kept blowing out around her as if she kept a wind under its folds. She no longer looked like an ordinary little old woman. She was a proper witch, but her eyes were kind and smiling. She took down from a shelf a very big book indeed. It seemed to be full of names and very tiny writing. What are your names? She asked. I must look you up in my goodness book before you can be told what you want to know. They told her, and she ran a finger down column after column. Ah, Peter helped a boy with his homework for a whole week last term, remembered his mum's birthday, owned up when he did something wrong, My word, there's a whole list of goodness here. And Molly, too, gave up her half-holiday to stay in with a friend who was ill. Told the truth when she knew she would get into trouble for doing so. Quite a long list of goodness for her, too. Now me, said Binky. I've been living with my mum, and I do try to be good to her. The old woman ran her finger down the list again and nodded her head. Yes, did his mother's shopping, never grumbled, took her breakfast in bed each day, never forgot to feed the dog. Yes, you're all right, Binky. What happens next? Said Peter. The witch took her book of goodness to a curious hole in the middle of the kitchen floor. It suddenly glowed as if it were full of shining water. The witch held the book over it, and out of it slid some little gleaming streaks of colour. That's your goodness going into the magic pool, she said. Now ask what you want to know. Binky asked in rather a trembling voice. We want to know where the land of goodness knows where it is. And dear me, a very extraordinary thing happened. On the top of the shining water appeared a shimmering map. In the middle of it was marked, Land of Goodness Knows Where. The children and Binky leaned over it eagerly, trying to see how to get there. Look, we fly due east to the rising sun, began Binky. Then he stopped. They all heard a very peculiar noise outside, a loud, creaking noise. The chair's calling to us, cried Binky, and he rushed to the door. Oh, look, it's flying away, and someone else is in it. Someone's stolen the wishing chair. Oh, whatever shall we do? Ooh. So, I've got to admit, that is quite exciting. And probably more exciting than the famous 5. But I shall wait for you to tell me what you would like me to do. Okay. Love you loads. Mwah.